Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in today. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Megan Warren, and I'm a certified coach. My specialty is emotional resilience. If you don't know what emotional resilience is, essentially it's learning how to be ourselves in every situation, how to show up the same, so that everyone sees one you, not three different yous in three different groups. And it's learning how to deal with challenging people and situations, but still create solutions in those situations that work for all parties involved. In addition to being an emotional resilience coach, I am also an expat single mom. I love rock climbing, reading, red wine, and traveling. Professionally, my background is in public health and business development. Now, I've started creating weekly videos that are designed to help you navigate some of the sticky challenges in life. So if this video or any of the other ones that I put out resonates with you, subscribe to my channel, and that way you can stay updated. So today, we're going to take a look at the energy you spend worrying and ruminating. And we're going to look at some of the different tools you can use to really stop the negative thinking traps. Now, there are a lot of different thinking traps out there. In this video, I'm only going to cover a few of them, specifically 4 of them. And we're going to look at how we use them, and then we'll talk through some of the different tools that we have and how they work. So, given that you are watching this video, I assume that you are aware that you worry a lot and that you get stuck replaying events over and over and thinking about what you could have done differently, how you could have shown up in a different fashion to get a different outcome. So, as with the other topics that we've looked at, if you've watched any of my other videos, let's start with what is. So, understanding exactly what the thinking traps do to us can help us find the motivation to stop participating in them. Because those thinking traps really block us from achieving our dreams and unlocking our potential. So take a minute and think of a current situation when you noticed yourself worrying, and try to estimate the amount of time and focus that you placed on it. So take that percentage and now double it, because you assigned it that amount, but you only assigned it that amount because of what you were aware that you were focusing on it. It doesn't account for the time that you were focused on avoiding thinking about it. It doesn't account for the energy that you were spending, the hunched shoulders and the clenched jaw and the back pain, right? It doesn't account for that energy that you've spent avoiding the pain and the stress that the situation's creating in you. So not only does chronic worrying sap our energy, it keeps you stuck. Your brain is designed to travel familiar paths. So when you worry, you follow predictable patterns of thinking. Now, those predictable patterns of thinking can become overly rigid as you employ them again and again. And this really drives the way you interpret the situation, which then makes it harder for you to see the situation accurately. It also makes it harder for you to think of creative ways to solve the problem. So then you get stuck. You get stuck in unproductive emotions. You get stuck in narrow looping perspectives. And given that these narrow looping perspectives are created from your interpretation of the event or situation, well, you have a high chance that that interpretation is based on actually a misinterpretation, right? Or it's based on an error in the way that you perceived what happened. So essentially, you're very likely worrying about a reality that, it probably doesn't exist, or at least certainly not in the exact manner that you're remembering it, right? So if I take myself as an example, I had a dust up with a good friend recently because we were in the same situation, but we both interpreted something entirely different out of it. So we're both intelligent women. We were in the same place at the same time doing the same thing. And if it's possible that we took away two entirely different interpretations that were no way similar. What that goes to show is that there is no one reality, one truth that everyone sees and agrees to. And where we were both, living in our separate interpretations, we weren't actually living in the same reality. So, our individual realities absolutely guided each of us. My reality supported my thoughts, my feelings, and actions, and her reality did the same thing for her in the situation. Now, we got lucky because we both have an innate trust that the other one has our best interests at heart. So we were able to sit down and repair our relationship. But it really amazed me how vulnerable we are to our interpretations. That misinterpretation on each of our sides could have cost us a valuable friendship. But even though it didn't, our interpretation certainly cost us time, energy, and emotional angst, right? Afterwards, both of us admitted to having conversations in our heads. I had the conversation in my head with her, convincing her of my position, and she did the same thing with me. And that was the time that we spent obviously focusing on the situation, right? But I know from my side, I also had low back pain, and I also had not a lot of patience, because the energy that I was normally using for, just getting through life and my own wellness, I was putting towards pushing back the negative feelings from the fight with my friend. So the point of this example is simply to show you that making a single interpretation and not being able to see multiple perspectives keeps you stuck not only in the situation, but it drains your energy, and it also blocks you from being able to see that there are, in any one situation, many different perspectives. And those perspectives are key to moving forward. Now, before we take a look at how we can develop the mental agility that's required not only to see, but also to physically or mentally enter into the multiple perspectives, let's take a look at some of the most common ways we get stuck in our negative thought loops. So I'm going to walk through four thinking traps that I see a lot with clients. And there are a lot more, but these are just some of the most common. So there's the me thinking trap. You see a negative situation and you see it as your fault. You aren't enough. You aren't capable. You should have done better, right? You should have been more. And in the vortex of the negative thought, you beat yourself up. And you ultimately decide that you will never be good enough for anything. You take that one event and you expand the faults that cause this situation across all of your skills and all of your experiences. So the second thinking trap I see is the them trap, where essentially it's the me trap but turned towards the other person. So you see that same situation as someone else's or everyone else's fault. You could do better or be better if only they wouldn't have acted that way. It really is similar to the me trap, because not only is it the same thing about someone else stopping you or you stopping you, you make it global. It crosses all periods and events in your life. So the third trap is the mind reading trap. You think you know what the other person is thinking and feeling, and you base all of your thoughts, emotions, and actions around an assumption that you understand what's going on inside the other person. And conversely, you also expect that they have a good understanding, or they should have, of what's going on inside you, which then actually only makes any negatively interpreted situation even worse, because they should know how their words and actions affect you, right? Now, the fourth trap that I'm going to mention today is catastrophizing. So you take a single negative event and you apply it to your entire life, past and future. You can't see your way out of the ultimate failure, right? Everywhere you turn, there are no solutions, and the situation only gets worse. And the single negative event means you're going to fail at life. So do any of these negative thought loops that I've just described resonate with you? My personal favorite that I still struggle not to fall into is the me thinking trap, which is a lot about how much I like control. But I won't go off on that sidetrack in this video. But since we've taken a moment to look at what is, and we've covered some of the common types of negative thinking patterns, and we've covered how they start a lot of times with a misinterpretation of a situation, and that interpretation blocks us rather than serving us. And then we looked at kind of the negative thought loops and how that impacts us, because it drains us mentally and emotionally as we put all of our energy into thinking, convincing the other person, like I did with my friend, or to maintaining or tolerating the back pain. So now that we've covered that, let's look at a transition to what we can do. So the really cool thing about this, the amazing thing, is that if it's based on our interpretation of a challenge, and it's based on the story then we write in our head about it, and that story is followed by a pattern we unroll, a thinking pattern, and we spend a lot of time engaging in it, well then we have the power to do it differently. We have the power to make a different interpretation and use a different thinking pattern. How cool is that? So the first thing that we can do to develop our mental agility, so you can step into an observer self. And this observer self will help you find some emotional distance. And that really helps you see that there are many interpretations of a situation. And this is going to help you decide which perspective best serves you. Once you can see multiple perspectives, no matter how implausible, so just throw them all out on the table. Once you see them all, you can then decide which one is going to give you the greatest sense of peace. Because the point here is to find peace. It isn't to justify what the other person is doing or accept them. So to step into the observer self, take a deep breath. And as you release that breath, stop and notice whatever posture you're sitting in. Notice how the backs of your thighs connect with the chair. If you're standing, notice how the soles of your feet press into your shoes or the floor. Take the time to really observe this. Pause the video if you need, or do it after. And while you're noticing your thighs or your feet, while you're noticing parts of you, you'll notice that another part of your mind is active, right? So it might be thinking about how this article applies to another area of your life. It might be that you're making your grocery list. It might be that you're focused on a noise that you heard on the street. What's key here is that you have the ability to break your mind into different parts. And this is really key to being able to see multiple perspectives at the same time. So just like you, the other person in the situation is able to think and feel simultaneously on multiple levels. They too can break their minds into different parts. And they have whole worlds going on inside of them. Worlds that you don't know anything about. So in any one situation, there are always multiple options about what is actually going on. So take a minute after you've tapped in with your observer self and try to identify as many of these multiple options as you can, no matter how implausible they seem. So essentially, that step is designed to help you increase your emotional distance from the negative emotions in the situation. What it does is it builds context, which makes it more likely that you will be able to understand the other person's reality. Now, I mentioned this quickly before, but the goal here is not to understand the other person in order to, whitewash something that bothers you. The point is that it will make it easier for you to bear the negative emotions. If you can start with the assumption that the other person is doing their best, given the beliefs that they hold and the challenges they are experiencing, and you can empathize, which again is not the same as justifying behavior, it's just understanding, then this step will really help you find a space that is less emotionally charged, more emotionally peaceful. Now, the second step after practicing being an observer is to notice the thinking pattern that you're employing and to challenge and reframe it. In any of the thinking traps above, taking the time to ask yourself what evidence you have that, well, you're a loser, or, what proof do you have that this situation means that your whole life is going down the drain? Taking time to question that and challenge that can help you realize how much of your feeling is actually based on interpretation rather than fact. So at this point, you can then bring out the multiple perspectives that you pinpointed in step 1 and ask yourself, how much is that interpretation serving you? Is there an interpretation that would serve you better? How might you use one of those interpretations to reframe how you see the situation? If you reframed it as not your fault, or that it didn't have any indication of your value or your life path, well, how might that better empower you to feel good about the situation? And then if you felt better about the situation, how might that change your actions in the moment or in the weeks after? How much more energy might you have if you actually reframed the story in your head? Reframed it in a way that let you release the negative thoughts and emotions. Thank you so much for being here and for listening and for taking the time to work through some of this difficult stuff. As in all my videos, I end with a challenge. So I'm going to challenge you to use the tools that we talked about today to get yourself unstuck. So after this video, think of one situation that's draining your mental and emotional energy. Try to step back and see multiple perspectives. Identify the negative thought pattern and ask yourself, is that interpretation serving me? And then choose a different storyline to focus on. Choose one that serves you and see if that impacts your pattern. Please do come back to the comments, share what you're learning so we can all grow together as a community. Share where you're getting stuck. If you share where you're getting stuck, then we can look together at how we can help you shift that outcome. And if you'd like to take that a step further and you want to explore, developing an observer self or shifting how you interpret situations, then contact me on my website, www.meganwarrencoaching.com, and use the link to schedule a free discovery call with me. Thank you again for listening. I hope you have a great day. Be well.